Salut tout le monde, c'est Chris. Gros rebondissement dans l'affaire Jean-Michel Trogneux, Brigitte Macron, Emmanuel Macron. On a cette américaine du nom de Candace Owens, rappelez-vous, on a déjà parlé d'elle à plusieurs reprises sur cette chaîne, qui hier nous a posté une vidéo qui a déjà comptabilisé des milliers, voire même des millions de vues à l'heure actuelle, où elle nous lit une lettre que Macron, que les avocats de Macron lui auraient envoyée pour la faire taire et également pour la menacer. On va revenir sur les éléments de cette lettre, elle nous a fait une vidéo, elle va nous expliquer son point de vue, mais également cette lettre va répondre à plusieurs de nos interrogations que l'on a concernant cette affaire depuis maintenant un long moment. On va essayer de débunker tout ça ensemble, donc si vous êtes intéressés, continuez à regarder. Mais avant de commencer la vidéo, n'hésitez surtout pas à vous abonner et à activer la cloche de notification pour être toujours au rendez-vous. Actualité, polémique, scandale, people, télé-réalité, storytime, ici on parle de tout. Et n'hésitez pas à faire un tour en barre d'infos si vous souhaitez davantage soutenir la chaîne. Merci beaucoup. Petit disclaimer, avec ce genre de vidéo, j'aime toujours faire des disclaimers et surtout des trigger warnings, c'est très important. Si je prends part en quelque sorte dans le débat et que je vous parle de ce genre d'histoire, d'événements, de vidéos, d'actualité, c'est parce que beaucoup de personnes s'interrogent, beaucoup de personnes se sentent concernées, mais également un petit peu, si vous voulez, s'interrogent sur la vérité. Et il y a des gens qui ont soif de vérité, ils ont soif de justice. Cette vidéo n'a aucunement but à diffamer, calomnier ou même pointer du doigt, blâmer quelqu'un. C'est une vidéo purement, j'ai envie de vous dire, à but instructif en quelque sorte, et à débat également. Bien évidemment, il y a des gens qui ne sont pas d'accord, il y a des gens qui sont d'accord, ce que j'appelle vraiment, voilà, il faut de tout pour faire un monde, mais s'il vous plaît dans les commentaires, restez respectueux et bien évidemment courtois sans pour autant aller insulter à gauche, à droite. Il y a des gens qui n'aiment pas du tout ce sujet de vidéo, il y a des gens qui pensent qu'on s'acharne sur Brigitte Macron, sur Emmanuel Macron et ainsi que sur d'autres personnes. Au bout d'un moment, s'il vous plaît, j'ai envie de vous dire, ouvrez les yeux, on a le droit de donner notre avis sans pour autant calomnier, diffamer qui que ce soit. Ça a purement but à informer, à avoir un débat et un échange entre plusieurs personnes. Par ailleurs, on n'est pas beaucoup en France à parler de cette histoire, je crois qu'on est vraiment que très peu des francophones à parler de ce qui peut se passer ailleurs dans le monde, parce que même les grands médias n'en parlent pas, même les médias internationaux dans n'importe quelle langue n'en parlent pas forcément de la vidéo de Candace Owens et du bruit que c'est en train de faire. Donc j'ai envie de mettre un petit peu ma main à la pâte et un petit peu vous informer sur ce qui a été dit et ce qui en découle de cette lettre. Donc écoutez, on peut commencer la vidéo, c'était le petit disclaimer et bien évidemment je sais qu'il y a des gens qui ne respecteront pas ça, mais c'est important de le faire également. Le 10 janvier 2025, Candace Owens nous a posté une vidéo sur sa chaîne YouTube qui s'intitule « J'ai reçu une menace légale d'un président en exercice ». Elle parle ici d'Emmanuel Macron, enfin du couple certainement Macron, et ce qui m'a fait doucement rire, c'est que sur sa miniature, il y a écrit « Mr. and Mr. Macron are upset », qui veut tout simplement dire en français « Monsieur et Monsieur Macron sont en colère ». Personnellement, j'ai rigolé, ça m'a fait doucement esquisser un petit sourire. Je me suis dit, bon, elle cherche un petit peu les noises, elle aime bien un petit peu piquer, si vous voulez, mais ça m'a fait doucement rire. Dans cette vidéo, elle nous dit qu'elle a reçu une lettre de 33 pages où on pointe du doigt le comportement de Candace. Elle a fait à plusieurs reprises des vidéos sur l'histoire de Jean-Michel Trogneux. Si Jean-Michel Trogneux était Brigitte Macron, si Brigitte Macron avait fait une transition, que cette personne était un homme auparavant et est devenue une femme. On va pas forcément revenir sur tous les éléments, vous le verrez bien avec la vidéo de Candace qui est traduite et sous-titrée en français. Et il y a vraiment des éléments qui sont assez, comment j'ai envie de vous dire, qui sont vilains. Parce qu'à travers la vidéo de Candace, on va vite se rendre compte que les avocats de Macron, enfin le cabinet d'avocats, répond à certaines interrogations que l'on pouvait avoir, notamment sur l'âge où Brigitte et Emmanuel Macron se sont rencontrés. Ils nous répondent clairement que c'était à l'âge de 15 ans pour Macron. Pareil, il y avait une espèce de pouvoir, de supériorité vis-à-vis de ce dernier, c'est-à-dire que Brigitte avait un rôle de professeur, un rôle où comment on pourrait appeler ça, il est censé y avoir une certaine autorité, un contrôle sur le dit enfant, adolescent, et là aussi ça révèle pas mal de choses. Les gens vont vite se rendre compte que depuis longtemps, j'ai envie de vous dire, on nous prend un petit peu pour des imbéciles.
But here's where it gets really interesting, okay? Then they insist on explaining to me that calling someone a rapist in France, they have different laws, and they insist that it's not statutory rape because Emmanuel was or would have been 15. They heavily imply this. This is the exact verbiage from the letter. It reads, Mrs. Macron did not statutorily rape President Macron. Let us be clear that the age of consent in France is 15. The two met and fell in love in 1993 when she was a drama teacher and he was 15 years old. When President Macron was 17, he vowed to marry Mrs. Macron, following through with his promise. They wed in 2007 when President Macron was 29 years old. Now, I want to first let you guys know that this is stunning because all throughout the time that President Macron was running, their story was that he was 17 years old, okay? Now we have here writing that they're now adjusting that. All the publications said, oh, he was 17, it makes him sound like he's almost legal. And she was, however, I think they said she was 34. And one of the things that we told you was that this whole legend that they created in the legacy media was dishonest, and they allowed this to go on and go on until people started looking, independent journalists, and going, wait a second, Emmanuel Macron was not 15. And I also believe there's an interview where Emmanuel Macron states that he met her before he was 15 years old. But them implying that the age of consent in France is 15 is actually wholesale dishonesty, because what they're leaving out is the age of consent at that time when they were together. It was 15 only if the person that they had the affair with, the sexual affair with, was not someone who had any power or control. That is still the law in France today, okay? So in order for it to be age of consent, it cannot be a teacher, it cannot be a therapist, it cannot be any person when you are a minor that has control over you. And as they mentioned in that same paragraph, Emmanuel Macron was the student of Brigitte Macron. So that would not have been allowed under the law, and this is something that we are happy to debate. In America, this would be statutory rape one way or the other. And in France, I'm pretty sure that still constitutes statutory rape. But we will allow you to respond to that in a more thorough manner, because now that we've established connection, you have no excuse not to answer our pointed questions.
On a Candace Owens qui était en top tweet France hier. Elle l'a même laissé savoir sur son canal, sur sa chaîne, enfin sur sa page, son profil Twitter, où l'on pouvait notamment lire, bon alors c'est traduit grossièrement, mais voici ce qu'on pouvait lire. Alors que nous terminons notre exposé, nous demandons maintenant au public français s'il y a une personne qui a fréquenté une école, une université, ou qui faisait peut-être partie d'une équipe sportive avec, ou qui a eu des contacts avec Brigitte Macron, née Trogneux, et qui peut partager un annuaire ou d'autres photos de classe. Veuillez envoyer un email à info Candace Owens, etc. Elle nous a posté cette photo aujourd'hui où Candace Owens en France était top tweet à la suite de cette fameuse vidéo. Et les gens, encore une fois, ont soif de vérité, ont soif d'histoire. Il y a également ce côté un petit peu, j'ai envie de dire, mesquin, où les gens veulent connaître le déroulement de tout ça. Il y a des gens qui se posent des questions, il y a des gens qui veulent vraiment et qui sont vraiment investis, que ce soit des journalistes, des personnes lambda, des personnes qui ont voté pour Macron, des personnes qui sont extérieures à la politique, etc. Il y a bien évidemment des gens qui ont soif de vérité et qui ont soif de justice. Justice, surtout qu'en France, il y en a de moins en moins. On ne va pas non plus se mentir, on va dire la vitrine, on va dire les termes dans cette vidéo. Il y a de moins en moins de justice en France. À partir du moment où on te dit liberté d'expression, liberté d'expression, il n'y en a pas autant que ça. J'ai envie de vous dire, dès qu'on commence à parler d'un truc vis-à-vis de cette histoire, on nous fait rapidement savoir qu'on peut être en danger. Personnellement, moi, je n'émets pas trop d'avis là-dessus. Je vous partage les quelques extraits, les quelques échanges qu'il peut y avoir, mais surtout les informations que certaines personnes mettent en ligne. Et c'est très important aussi parce que ça reste une histoire qui passionne Français et Françaises.
All right, so where do I begin? Yesterday, I received a letter, and I would say that this letter plausibly changed the trajectory of this year, certainly for me. You know, I don't know why people keep sending me letters. And I am going to tell you that I received this letter from a process server. Now, when you hear that you are getting a letter from a process server, you think one of two things in my world. You are being sued or you are being subpoenaed. It actually happens way more often than you realize. Sometimes you're being drafted into someone's lawsuit. They think that you have some information or some text messages, or otherwise you yourself are being sued, like when I was being sued by Kimberly Klacik for defamation, which eventually I won that after years. So it's not something that particularly unnerves me anymore, because typically sometimes you're getting drafted and there's no reason for you to be drafted. Your lawyer responds to it and it's completely over. But this one was indeed addressed to me. And what was strange about this is that when my lawyer was able to determine what it was and who it was from, this was atypical because it was not a lawsuit and it was not a subpoena, but it was a strongly worded letter. essentially a legal threat. And people don't typically use process servers for legal threats. Even stranger was who it was coming from. It was coming from a law firm representing current sitting president, Emmanuel Macron, and his wife, Brigitte Macron. Okay? Like I said, this is insane. I don't think this has ever happened in the history of the world. Plausibly, you don't hear about a foreign leader currently sitting in power, sending around legal letters to people that are sitting in other countries, no matter what that person is saying. But it's going to get so much more crazier than that, okay? Because there were a lot of odd things about this letter. First and foremost, they strenuously requested that I not publicize it. They did not want me to publicize this letter all over it. This is not meant to be publicly disseminated. Okay, you have no legal right to tell somebody that they can't share a letter that they received. I'm sorry you sent it. I have a right to share it. And I'm going to tell you my suspicion about why it came across as they wanted to keep this rather hush-hush. But apart from asking me not to publicize it, they get into explaining to me how I am engaging in types of defamation. I'm going to show you this letter because the story behind it is even crazier, okay? So first and foremost, they are addressing statements, the bulk of this letter is addressing statements that I made last March. You're probably wondering in your head, why would they send this letter, which was addressed on December 3rd? That part is even crazier. But aside from telling me not to publicize it, they tell me right at the top that it's really none of my business whether or not Brigitte Macron is a man or a woman. Like, she doesn't have to answer that question. Here's what it said. I'm going to read you this verbatim. It said, this disinformation campaign is almost entirely based on a negative. Mrs. Macron has not provided definitive proof that she is a woman. Therefore, she must be a man. Not only is this an inherently unreliable basis for a claim, but also, and this is in bold, Mrs. Macron does not owe you proof that she is and always has been a woman, because frankly, it is none of your business. It is arrogant, self-centered, and truly offensive to believe that you are owed evidence of another's sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation. And additionally, it is defamatory to call someone a liar when they rightfully choose not to give in to your demands. Then it says, make no mistake, there is no shame in being LGBTQ+, but your accusations go beyond that. Okay. So right at the top there, again, what I've said to you that always struck me as odd about this story is this has been going on for approximately 10 years, okay? Now, if I'm the president and I'm dealing with a 10-year issue of people saying that my wife has a penis and I could just very easily debunk this, I'm sure as hell not going to pay lawyers overseas to send legal threats and legal letters that say, oh, okay, well, we're not going to answer the question, but we are going to send you a 100-page letter. It was 100 pages. Most of it was transcript. It really was like a 33-page letter. Most of it was transcript again. But the point being is that's a lot of effort for something that can be so easily debunked. So easily debunked. And I'm not the only journalist they've done this to, okay? They're sending out letters, civil harassment, saying that it's causing them stress, it's causing them anxiety. Wouldn't you just answer the question at a certain point, again, going with common sense? But it gets even more interesting. They also write in this letter that what they believe to be defamatory, among other things, is really just the implication to the French people that they're fraudulent and that they lie. So let me read that piece of this to you as well in this letter that I'm not supposed to publicize at all. These allegations are defamatory for multiple reasons. At the outset, it must be clear that there is nothing defamatory or reputationally damaging about being transgendered. But what is defamatory and highly damaging is attacking the integrity and the credibility of a president. I'm sorry, I just have to chuckle at that in general because I'm just thinking about President Trump and all the attacks. Like, what's defamatory is attacking the idea that Biden lies or that President Trump lies. You're not allowed to question their integrity in France. Like, this is just such a European letter in the sense that, like, they have no idea what free speech actually means of a president and Mrs. Macron with this vicious rumor that they are lying and manipulating the French people. One you knew was false at the time of publication. Okay, obviously, I do not think this is false at all. I'm going to tell you even more why I insist that there is a lot to the story. But just writing that seems very strange to me. They go on to speak about how the only proof that we have, which is completely untrue, is Chinese software that is comparing the faces of her and her alleged brother that doesn't like to make any appearances, which could easily just debunk this, right? And they're like, this is like crap, saying that they look alike. All siblings do look alike, or some siblings can look exactly alike. They say that that's completely normal. And then they provide even more proof that it's obvious that Brigitte is not a man. And the proof is that Brigitte says she's not a man. I'm not kidding. Here, this is the actual language of the letter. They write, beyond this, your conspiracy theory hinges on Mrs. Macron's family refusing to subject themselves to public scrutiny. Okay, you guys, so the reason that they're not answering this or responding to this is because they don't need to be publicly scrutinized. Like, why would a president and a first lady have to be publicly scrutinized? That just doesn't come with the territory when you live in a place like Europe and you don't have free speech. They can just hush you and sue you for speaking. Like I said, they are in for a rude awakening. This is America. And the next line really gets me, because they say what should be enough evidence to disprove these falsehoods is that Mrs. Macron has denied them. President Macron has denied them, and Mrs. Macron's daughter, Tifone, has denied them. Okay, so that's how it works now in the court of law, guys. If I say no, absent any proof, you need to just accept that's the truth. Everybody always tells the truth all the time, especially in politics. Haven't we learned that? Nobody ever lies in politics. If they say something, it's definitely true. Trust me, bro. It's basically trust me, bro.
Certaines personnes parlent notamment des études qui ont été faites en Algérie à l'époque. Apparemment, Brigitte Macron aurait étudié en Algérie. Je vous rappelle que l'Algérie de 1830 à 1962 était française, sous l'occupation française. J'espère que je dis le bon terme ici. Et d'après certaines personnes, c'est Brigitte Macron qui avait fait ses études, etc. Il y a des archives où tout était listé. Chaque maison, chaque personne qui y habitait était listée sur des documents. Il y avait même le nombre de poulets qui étaient en possession de certaines familles, le nombre d'arbres, enfin d'oliviers. Il y avait tout qui était enregistré sur des archives. Et des gens disent que c'est tout bonnement presque impossible de trouver une Brigitte Macron, une Brigitte Trogneux à l'époque en Algérie. Cependant, certains éléments, certains documents nous disent qu'il y avait bel et bien un Jean-Michel Trogneux. Et ça, encore une fois, c'est d'après les archives universitaires que l'on peut, que certaines personnes ont redocumenté et qui ont été, si vous voulez, un petit peu étudiées. C'est quand même hyper important de le rappeler. Par ailleurs, Candace Owens a reçu cette fameuse lettre de 33 pages, je tiens à le préciser, 33 pages, et dans ces fameuses pages, certains éléments nous disent « Mais non, regardez, Jean-Michel Trogneux existe bel et bien, c'est le petit gros que l'on voit derrière l'investiture de Emmanuel Macron à l'époque, une vidéo qui date d'il y a quelques années maintenant. Il y a un lien qui dit en gros, cliquez dessus pour que vous puissiez voir les éléments que l'on a en notre possession, les preuves que l'on nous donne et que l'on donne à Candace, c'est vraiment des trucs bateaux. Regardez, il y a un petit gros derrière, voilà, pendant l'investiture de Macron, c'est lui, Jean-Michel Trogneux. Cependant, on va vite se rendre compte à travers ce que Candace nous dit que elle a retrouvé cette fameuse personne. Elle sait de qui il s'agit et bien évidemment, il ne s'agit pas, d'après elle, d'après ses dires, de ce fameux Jean-Michel Trogneux. C'est une personne totalement différente. C'est une personne qui n'a peut-être même aucun lien avec la famille, on ne sait pas trop encore. Cependant, la lettre qui lui a été envoyée, on lui a dit de ne, dans aucun cas, parler de ce qu'il avait dedans, de son contenu, de ce qui lui était reproché, et vous allez voir que ça fait vraiment un petit peu, j'ai envie de vous dire, presque froid dans le dos, parce que en fait il se tire une balle tout seul dans le pied. Quand je dis tout seul, c'est au pluriel, vraiment. Ils sont là en train de nous dire, bah non, tu ne peux pas parler de ci, de ça, de machin, de trucs de bidule. Mais si elle a envie d'en parler, elle en parle. Le pire, c'est que, encore une fois, c'est une Américaine. Vous voyez ce que je veux dire? Elle n'est pas en France ni en Europe. Elle a pas tous les droits, ça on est bien au courant, mais si elle veut en parler, elle en parlera. Elle a même laissé comment dire, un message sur son profil, sous son profil Twitter qui est pas criant de vérité, mais qui donne un petit peu son point de vue vis-à-vis de toute cette histoire, que je vais vous lire maintenant. Voici ce qu'on pouvait lire du coup sur le profil de Twitter, Twitter de Candace Owens. Elle a hashtagué Emmanuel Macron, elle l'a cité à Emmanuel Macron. Veuillez demander à vos avocats de ne jamais révéler à un Américain ce qu'ils peuvent ou ne peuvent pas publier. Vous avez gardé de nombreux secrets dans votre vie, mais je ne suis pas votre journal intime. Toutes les correspondances entre nos équipes juridiques seront accessibles au public. Nous reviendrons vers vos équipes demain avec des questions spécifiques auxquelles vous devrez répondre avant la publication de notre examen beaucoup plus approfondi de la vie antérieure de Brigitte Macron. Comme nous l'avons déjà indiqué, les erreurs factuelles mineures que nous avons commises concernant la personne qui a donné naissance aux enfants de Brigitte seront corrigées. De même, nous corrigerons notre affirmation selon laquelle la photo de communion présentée comme preuve de sa jeunesse a été recolorée. Nous savons maintenant qu'elle n'a pas été recolorée, mais nous maintenons que la personne sur la photo de communion n'est pas votre femme et nous avons la solide preuve pour étayer cette affirmation. Notre métier n'est pas de mentir, par conséquent, nous nous attendons à ce que vous répondiez simplement, si vous en avez l'occasion, au fond de la question de savoir si votre femme actuelle a vécu ou non en tant qu'homme avant sa transition. Nous avons hâte d'être en contact. Franchement, je vous dis, cette histoire, c'est vraiment le truc de 2025. Parce que je vous rappelle, il me semble que c'est juillet ou octobre 2025, un procès va avoir lieu contre plusieurs personnes, notamment Zoé Sagan, la personne qui tenait le compte Zoé Sagan sur Twitter, pour plusieurs chefs d'inculpation, je ne sais pas si on pourrait dire ça comme ça, mais pour plusieurs choses qui sont notamment dues apparemment à la diffamation, calomnie, je ne sais trop quoi, comme d'habitude, toujours les mêmes termes, mais les preuves, enfin j'ai envie de vous dire, au bout d'un moment, amenez-nous les preuves, montrez-nous, ramenez les deux personnes, et je me répète à chaque fois dans cette histoire, montrez-nous Jean-Michel Trogneux et Brigitte Macron l'un à côté de l'autre. Tout simplement. Et là, peut-être que certaines personnes se diront, bon, ben on a merdé, on a fait des grosses conneries, on a dit des erreurs, on vous présente nos plus plates excuses et nous, nous subirons les conséquences de nos actes, tout simplement. En aucun cas. Alors, cette histoire pourrait être réglée comme ça, vraiment réglée en un claquement de doigts, mais ils ne le font pas. Il faut m'expliquer pourquoi ils ne le font pas. J'essaie moi-même de comprendre. Et beaucoup de gens, et je vous dis, beaucoup de gens sont vraiment intéressés par cette histoire, mais ne prennent pas la parole. Moi, je l'ai bien vu quand j'ai fait les vidéos, que certaines personnes venaient m'envoyer des DM, des personnes venaient m'en parler quand ils me reconnaissaient dans la rue. J'ai même des gens qui viennent m'en parler, enfin, des gens que je connais, que je peux côtoyer, etc. Les gens sont vraiment intrigués par cette histoire.
We're going to go on and show you a little bit more of this letter because this, to me, was the craziest part of the entire thing. So after saying, we don't have to tell you any proof, we don't have to show you any proof, trust me, bro, they then try to say that there have been some journalists that have introduced some evidence and you should have been paying attention in the form of, I'm not kidding, this is coming from the president of France. They have submitted to us screenshots of an 8-year-old video that they allege proves that Jean-Michel Trogneux, so the theory is that Brigitte lived as Jean-Michel Trogneux, then took on the name of a sister named Brigitte and became Brigitte Trogneux later on in life. Okay, that is the theory. They are now saying that this journalist noticed that in the background of Emmanuel Macron's inauguration, the real Jean-Michel Trogneux was there. They sent us a YouTube link, I'm not kidding, of 2 different instances, and they claim that in the background, you see this little fat man? I'm showing you, this is actually from a legal letter right here. They say that's Jean-Michel Trogneux. That's proof. Look, it's a still. They then sent us a YouTube link from the inauguration, and in the background, they're like, see, in the background, that's Jean-Michel Trogneux. We swear that's him. Hello, you are the alleged first lady, first man of France, and Emmanuel Macron, and you're telling me this is the evidence that you are supplying to journalists that this person exists? A link to a YouTube video that I'm going to show you right now. This is the link to the video. This is it, guys. This is proof.
Dans ces instants où tout...
Oh, was that not enough evidence for you to leave this entire theory alone? Like, they're not making a statement, but you should have caught in the background there. Here, we'll circle it for you. That's the real Jean-Michel Trogneux that they just won't do a press conference with and allow people to know where this person works, where this person exists. You should just know that right there debunks everything, because this channel, Edition Speciale, captured that in the background, and they said some journalists said that that's definitely him. So we're ignoring all the journalists who are saying that it's not, and we have a name for that person that's in the background. I'm not going to tell you that today, but that's it. They sent this via a huge law firm as proof that the real Jean-Michel Trogneux does exist. The lingering man in the background, link on a YouTube video that's 8 years old. Shocking. They're also upset that we here in America felt the Olympics ceremony was satanic. You're not allowed to say that. This is Europe. You don't have free speech. You can't say that the Olympics ceremony was very clearly satanic. Here I am saying it again. Wait till they find out that you don't get to tell a Christian what is and is not satanic because you are the president of France. You just don't get the right to do that. They wrote this in the letter. This is real. You pressed these lies harder after the Olympics opening ceremony in Paris. On July 29th, you released another episode titled The Olympics Exposed Brigitte Macron. As you know, the 2024 Olympics opening ceremony was widely misinterpreted as a reenactment of the Last Supper, but it was intended to represent the Feast of Dionysus. Nonetheless, you claimed that the satanic Olympic ceremony was really a ceremony to honor Brigitte Macron because she's transgendered. You posted on X that Brigitte is a transvestite and called it a demonic state. Now, this gets into them now drafting in Archbishop Vigano because they're talking about me retweeting Archbishop Vigano. Take a look at this. It is telling that you retweeted a statement by Archbishop Vigano, a man who had just been excommunicated from the Catholic Church for his denial of the legitimacy of Pope Francis and other crimes of schism. And it is me retweeting Archbishop Vigano explicitly calling Brigitte Macron transvestite. Now, to my knowledge, Archbishop Vigano has not received a letter threatening him. Isn't that strange? Called him a transvestite, has not received a letter at all threatening him. And I will tell you why that is. Of course, in every letter that people send, there has to be an honorable mention of the Tate brothers because they're always relevant. And then they wrote this, which is very strange. They don't include the language here. Your disinformation campaign included the Tate brothers, a pair of grossly self-proclaimed misogynists that are charged with human trafficking. I'm going to show you how rich that irony is in a second. On August 14th, you hosted Tristan Tate on Candace and discussed these claims. And the following day, on August 15th, you hosted his brother, Andrew Tate. In the August 15th episode, you and Andrew reiterated your claims that the Macrons are dishonest, implied the French election was rigged, like the 2020 U.S. election. Now, I know I certainly didn't imply that the French election was rigged, because I don't follow French politics. I'm following the story because it's massive. And the way that you are acting in trying to play whack-a-mole with every person that looks into the story and recognizes that there's something here strikes me as odd. Also, asking me not to publish the letter strikes me as odd. And lastly, to the point of saying that us implying that you guys are dishonest, I don't even know, are you out of your mind? Are you out of your mind thinking that people can't imply that a president and his wife are dishonest? Or is it really that bad in France? Is it so, are you just deluded out of your mind for me to say that I believe that you and your wife lie? It's almost a requirement to be in politics that you have to lie. You literally have to almost lie to become a president of France or the president of any place in the entire world. What is this letter actually about? Well, you guys might be wondering about now about the timing of this letter, because again, the referencing posts from June, primarily an episode that I posted in March upon a different platform. They have not drafted that platform into this complaint whatsoever. So it's targeting me at least 6 months after the last time that I've spoken about Emmanuel Macron. The story I'm going to tell you is insane. So what is this actually about? Why are they sending this letter now? Like I said, the story I'm going to tell you, it's stranger than fiction, okay?
Au cours de la vidéo, on a Candace Owens qui va nous parler de journalisme jaune. Beaucoup ne savent peut-être pas ce que c'est, donc j'ai trouvé comment on appelle ça, une définition, surtout que ça va être hyper important dans le déroulement de la vidéo pour que vous compreniez et que vous ne soyez pas perdu avec certains termes. Voici ce que l'on pouvait lire. Journalisme jaune. Donc le journalisme jaune est un style de journalisme qui met l'accent sur le sensationnalisme plutôt que sur des faits précis ou une analyse sérieuse. Il cherche souvent à attirer l'attention avec des titres choquants, exagérés, ou même parfois trompeurs en privilégiant des histoires dramatiques ou scandaleuses. Ce type de journalisme vise surtout à vendre plus d'exemplaires ou à attirer plus de lecteurs plutôt qu'à informer de manière rigoureuse. Par exemple, il peut inclure des rumeurs non vérifiées, des images provocantes ou des récits très émotionnels pour susciter une réaction forte du public. Donc en gros, on pourrait appeler ça du putaclic, si vous voulez. Ou ce que peut nous faire des fois BFM TV avec certaines informations pour faire du sensationnel, faire de l'audimat, etc. C'est ça le journalisme jaune. Donc journalisme jaune est égal putaclic. pour moi, voilà. Parce que Candace Owens a été pointée du doigt pour avoir arboré un t-shirt où il y avait la tête, le visage de Brigitte Macron et où sur ce fameux, sur ce fameux t-shirt, il y avait vraiment écrit des choses pas drôles mais qui ont laissé un petit peu sous-entendre que c'était un homme. Il y avait écrit notamment l'homme de l'année par le Times, donc le magazine Times, quoi prochainement. C'est quoi la suite? En gros, ils ont écrit ça dessus. Et c'est pour ça qu'elle a également reçu une lettre et c'est écrit, dans cette lettre, qu'elle va nous dévoiler. Je vous laisse maintenant avec la vidéo de Candace Owens. Vous pouvez regarder en plusieurs fois, vous pouvez regarder comme bon ça vous semble, mais vraiment c'est très important je trouve parce que à travers cette lettre, il y a vraiment eu des menaces, selon moi, des menaces par ailleurs qui sont extrêmement graves et où on est vraiment sur l'atteinte à la liberté d'expression des personnes. Vous voyez ce que je veux dire? Bien évidemment, liberté d'expression ne veut pas dire qu'on peut tout dire, tout faire, voilà, on est bien d'accord. Mais là, en l'occurrence, ça reste un débat. Les gens ont le droit de penser que oui, Emmanuel Macron, Brigitte Macron sont des menteurs. Surtout lorsque tu es, un président élu, on a le droit de se demander si oui ou non, tu veux le bien de tes compatriotes. Et ça, bien évidemment, j'ai envie de vous dire, on ne le voit pas.
Then it just gets even more bizarre because they're referring to t-shirts as a form of yellow journalism. So I sold this t-shirt mocking Brigitte Macron. It was a fake Time magazine cover and it said Man of the Year. And they view that as a form of yellow journalism. And that's interesting. So I'm going to read you that portion right now. It says, since then, you have continued to knowingly and intentionally peddle yellow journalism, defaming the Macrons. Indeed, you released another episode mentioning the conspiracy on June 26th. And then it says on July 7th, you brought these lies to the Jimmy Dore show. On July 8th, you again posted on X, this time with a photo of yourself in a t-shirt showcasing a fake Time magazine Man of the Year cover featuring Mrs. Macron, which has received 832,000 views and 3,000 retweets. And they actually put a picture of me wearing the shirt in this legal letter. And I wrote, I'm calling it now Time Man of the Year. It's an incredible shirt. Obviously, we now need to get this back up on sale. I don't know what is actionable in a parody shirt. I'm not sure where they're going with that, but they wanted to mention in a very strongly worded letter that this is a form of yellow journalism because there's obviously never been any t-shirts made about President Trump or Biden. You can't do that anymore. You're not allowed to sell Make Kamala Indian hats. Literally, what on earth were they thinking, including that, okay?
Parce que entre Brigitte Macron qui va faire les plateaux télé pour dire que Macron est meurtri, il prend beaucoup sur lui, il voit tout, il lit tout, on s'en fout, vraiment on s'en fout madame. Encore une fois, venir jouer les prolétaires avec nous, jouer les pauvres petites femmes meurtries ou lui meurtri, le couple vraiment de victimes, madame là, nos impôts qui ont payé ta bague à 49 000 € de chez Dior, sertie de diamants, hein. Ça, je l'ai vu, parce que j'aime bien Dior, vous le savez. Mais au bout d'un moment, venir jouer Madame je sais pas trop quoi, alors que tu es très proche du couple Arnaud, tu es très proche de plein de choses, de plein de personnes, de plein de médias. Arrêtez de vous foutre de notre gueule, arrêtez. Le peuple, on a marre de vous voir, le peuple français veut que vous dégagiez, littéralement. Un référendum aurait dû être fait depuis belle lurette, mais rien n'a été fait. Et dans tous les cas, Macron a bien dit « Je ne quitterai pas la présidence, mon poste de président jusqu'à la fin de mon mandat. » Donc tu nous chies à la gueule, tout simplement. Tu ne respectes pas les Français, tu nous méprises. Ce mec fait tout en sorte pour qu'on soit mal, que la France soit mal, ni plus ni moins. Autre et dernier tweet de Candace Owens qui me semble refléter pas mal de choses également dernièrement. Pour ceux d'entre vous qui ne le sauraient pas, le gouvernement de Macron se bat aussi désespérément pour que X, anciennement Twitter, soit totalement interdit en France, probablement parce que c'est le principal fournisseur d'informations sur son passé, donc le passé de Brigitte Macron. Ils prétendent vouloir l'interdire pour protéger les enfants. L'ironie est épaisse. C'est vrai que quand on parle d'un pays où la première dame, je sais, la première dame, ça n'existe pas, je vois déjà les commentaires arriver, où la première dame qui avait une trentaine, quarantaine d'années est sortie avec un gamin mineur, c'est vrai qu'on veut le bien des enfants, c'est vrai, on le sait. Ou quand on voit que pas mal de personnes ont commis des actes affreux sont toujours en liberté. Oui, on veut la bonne santé, la sécurité, le bonheur de nos enfants en France. Arrêtez, s'il vous plaît, de nous marcher dessus. Arrêtez de nous faire pipi dessus en nous faisant croire que c'est de la pluie. S'il vous plaît, vraiment, arrêtez. On le sait pourquoi vous voulez interdire certains médias, certaines plateformes. C'est tout simplement pour garder la vérité et éviter que certaines personnes vous la mettent à l'envers ou révèlent la vérité. Tout bonnement. Voilà. On va maintenant regarder la vidéo de Candace Owens. Prenez vraiment un truc à boire, à manger, posez-vous bien. N'hésitez pas à prendre le temps à repasser certains extraits parce qu'il y a beaucoup d'informations très importantes. Regardez bien.
It is my belief that the Macrons somehow became aware that we are just a couple of weeks away from releasing an explosive piece on Brigitte Macron. And I believe that this letter was sent to intimidate me. I don't believe that they intended to file anything. I could be wrong. My instinct here is that it was very much meant to terrify me because of an interview that I did that they are worried that when I release is going to go global, because it will. The backstory of that is that during Thanksgiving week, at the end of November, I was contacted by a French reporter claiming to have a trove of evidence to support the claim that the First Lady of France lived as a man named Jean-Michel Trogneau before becoming and transitioning to Brigitte. This evidence was even complete with names of doctors who worked on Brigitte, a theory with a lot of evidence as to who mothered the children, who gave birth to Brigitte's children. Because I took this individual to be extremely credible, I got on a plane and I flew to meet this journalist in Europe, okay? We did an interview that went on for about 2 hours on camera, and I collected all of his evidence. And apparently, just 10 days after that initial correspondence between me and that journalist, Emmanuel and Brigitte had this letter written to me. It is dated December 3rd, so just 10 days. So that, to me, leads me to believe that somehow, and again, I have no evidence to support this claim, the communications of this journalist are being monitored, that they knew that he was flying to meet me, that they knew that we conducted the interview, and that they knew that I was in communication with him, telling him that the interview was due to release in 2 weeks, okay? They knew that it was coming out this month and that they scrambled to get this out, to beef up this letter as much as possible, running the risk that, okay, well, getting a letter from the president of France is a scary thing. You know how much power he has. She'll at least press pause and not release the conversation, hoping that I would just be scared into silence if they beefed up the letter with scary mentions, which they did, by the way. The bottom of the letter, they told me, think about Tucker Carlson and Dominion. I'm paraphrasing here. They mentioned Tucker Carlson and Dominion as a lawsuit. Billions of dollars you could lose, Candace, if you cover this story. First and foremost, what are you talking about? You're comparing apples and lean cuisines, frozen meals at this point. You are a sitting president, okay? You are not above reproach. You are not above critique. And I am certainly allowed to look into you and your life and to ask questions, okay? You don't get to compare that to a private company who is saying that they have real world loss because people no longer trust their technology. Again, that was mentioned only to try to terrify me, I believe, because they know that we're working on this piece and they know that we have the pictures that we have, which tell a very different story from what the media has been trying to tell people. I believe that this proves what their strategy is. Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron, as they expressed in this letter, say nothing. They give nothing about whether or not Brigitte is transgender. They don't address the claims while they go on. And then they wait for journalists to make a mistake. This is what they did to 2 other journalists that were in France. They sued them and they lied to the public about what was at the nucleus of the lawsuit, right? Wait for you to say, she's transgendered, she was Jean-Michel Trogneau, she changed. And then if you misspeak about something, as one of the journalists did, and said, I think this birth certificate's fake, they sue you for that, for defamation. And they go, actually, that birth certificate wasn't fake. But they're not actually attacking the substance of the debate, whether or not Brigitte, in the current form, transitioned from a man named Jean-Michel Trogneau. They will not address these claims officially, despite sending these spurious articles and screenshots from a video from 7 or 8 years ago, they themselves say, we don't have to answer or produce any evidence whatsoever. So in terms of my issue, or their issue with me rather, they pounced on a mistake that I did make, by the way. They're not wrong, because after sitting down with this journalist and receiving the trove of evidence, they are correct that I wrongly identified at that time. And again, I was relying on a ton of reports, and I was clear that this was not my report, but rather what was going on in France. People were trying to answer the question of, okay, well, if Brigitte Macron did not give birth to those children, who did? And I wrongly named someone, which was being alleged at that time, named Brigitte Proba-Ozier. Again, I was just reiterating what the journalists were saying at that time. And I learned from this journalist, who is entirely credible and has been working on this story for 8 years, that that is not accurate. And so that's what you're looking for, Brigitte, right? An apology for that, which you say is defamatory, for alleging that Brigitte Ozier fathered these or gave birth to these children, Brigitte Proba-Ozier. You are correct. I'm not only just going to correct it here, I'm going to correct it in the long piece that I am working on about your background that I still intend to release in 2 weeks. So don't you worry. Any mistakes that I made, these little things that you're trying to catch on to because you don't want to address the substance of what people are presenting, which is whether or not you transitioned from Jean-Michel Trogneau to Brigitte. Any of the mistakes I made, I will fully correct on the record. And guess what? I now can do it in a way that's better than ever, because thankfully you have now reached out to me via your legal firm, which means that we now have a direct line of communication, and I'm going to send you pointed questions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you can now answer those questions, or you can decline to answer those questions. And if you decline to answer those questions, as you have done, well, then you can't prove here that there's any actual malice, because there isn't. I genuinely want to understand what the hell I am looking at throughout this trove of evidence. The people that have been involved in this, it is, like I said, the most explosive story ever. And what is interesting is that the reason you're going after me is because the only reason this story was contained for so long was because all of it was happening in France. Most of the people in the Western world can speak and understand English, which allows them to then look at the story in a different way. But when it was just in French reporters that were reporting on it, you were able to stifle that discussion. No more. I want to let you know that I'm not intimidated whatsoever. In fact, you have piqued my interest even further. And I want you to know that I'm looking into all of your friends, all of these instances of pedophilia, people that were involved. I mean, the English people don't even know about the Olivier Duhamel scandal, the scandal of another 14-year-old, a person that supported you, a person that you were in a lot of communication with, who had a daughter, a stepdaughter, come out and say that she was abused and that she was invited to elite, that her brother was abused, rather, let me correct that her twin brother was abused by Olivier Duhamel, which is, I fact-checked that online, and that appears to be a massive story in France, one that Le Monde, which is like the French New York Times, has been covering as something that you were quite worried about. That the Élysée Palace, quote, this is from Le Monde, ever since the Olivier Duhamel affair broke in early January, Emmanuel Macron has been monitoring each development like milk on the stove, reported Le Monde at the time. Incest with his stepson, Duhamel's stepson, age 13 or 14. A lot of characters in your circle. Elizabeth Guigou, Hubert Vadrine, Daniel Cohn-Bendit. These statements that are made about them, Jean-Marc Borrello. There have been a lot of sexual incidences that have surrounded your presidency that the English-speaking people, the English-speaking world does not know about. And all of these have been submitted to me, and I am deeply understanding this scandal, and I am deeply appreciating why it is that a president of a foreign country would take this time to try to get me to shut up, because you've done a very good job of containing all this. But I don't know if nobody told you this. I'm pregnant, right? When I get pregnant and people threaten me, I don't take very kindly to those sorts of threats. So this is going to get extremely interesting, and I will give you guys, my listeners, my idea of what I think is going to happen. So maybe Brigitte and Emmanuel Macron will file this lawsuit in the state of Tennessee. Maybe they will. And maybe in their mind, first off, they definitely didn't expect me to show this letter. I'll tell you that much. That's not something that most people would do. Most people would consult their lawyers and stay quiet about stuff. I don't take kindly to threats. I don't like threats, okay? I didn't get to where I am in life, come from absolutely nothing, to have some elite people threaten me into silence because I am exposing what I deem to be the truth, okay? Least of all when it's from a foreign nation that doesn't appreciate free speech or thinks that they can boss me around and tell me what is and is not satanic and how I must report upon their Olympics. Doesn't really work like that, okay? It just doesn't work like that at all. I think what's going to happen is that they were banking on me being silent. They realized that is not happening. They are probably banking on their money and they are probably banking on their power to somehow further stifle this situation, try to bank on, I don't know, trying to silence me in court in America. Good luck, buddy. Good luck trying to make that happen. Good luck trying to make the piece that we are working on, which is still due to be released in 2 weeks, and it's not going to come out on YouTube. I now think that you had something to do with the very bizarre videos that were taken down, 3 videos in which you have named in this legal letter, which made no sense at the time when they were being taken down, because you were worried about the information that we were revealing. Well, you should know that when we drop this series that we're working on about the Brigitte Macron scandal, it is not going to be on YouTube. You will have no power here, okay? It will be released on my website, CandaceOwens.com, and people will be able to watch it, whether they want to watch it in French or they want to watch it in English. You're banking on power structures. I'm banking on the people. Because you see, Mr. Macron, both of you, both misters, in my world, I bank on the people. When I get an itch about something or an instinct about something and people start thinking that the American people and the French people around the world are not going to win, I always bank on the regular people. You have no idea the army that we can unleash here of people that will investigate, that will look into things. Ask Kamala, friend there, ask Kamala what it was like when she went through the Kamala Chronicles. We will definitely, once the mothers here in America understand what is happening in France, inspire them, just mothers wanting to protect children, to look further into these claims and wonder what the hell is going on in France. And like I said, it will be an investigative army of regular people, okay? So I get it. You feel really protected by the state and you can send these sorts of things, but I think you're making the wrong bet here. We'll see what happens. Like I said, the piece is still due to come out in 2 weeks. And I bet, given the letter that you just sent me, the timing of that letter being particularly suspicious after all this time, that what we release will have more eyes than anything that we've ever released in the history of this show. So I bid you farewell, Mr. and Mr.
En tout cas, c'est la fin de cette vidéo. J'ai vraiment hâte d'être dans 2 semaines. Dans 2 semaines, il y aura une nouvelle vidéo de la part de Candace Owens où elle va nous sortir plus d'éléments, plus de preuves apparemment dans cette affaire. On va bien voir de quoi il retourne, de quoi il s'agit. Mais vraiment, comme je viens de vous dire, j'ai vraiment hâte. Et en même temps, j'ai une petite crainte. Est-ce que cette histoire est vraiment fausse, vraie? Je n'en sais rien. Mais encore une fois, ça passionne beaucoup de personnes et ça interroge beaucoup de personnes. Des personnes se disent vraiment estomaqué, et j'ai envie de vous dire, je comprendrais pourquoi des gens seraient choqués si on apprend qu'en réalité c'est vrai. Les gens vont se sentir trahis. Vous voyez ce que je veux dire? Donc on verra bien dans 2 semaines c'est quel type de vidéo qui va sortir. Elle ne sortira pas sur des plateformes comme YouTube, là où on peut un petit peu, si vous voulez, faire la pluie et le beau temps, surtout quand on est président. Elle va sortir sur d'autres plateformes et vraiment j'ai hâte. Donc on fera certainement une autre vidéo sur le sujet dans 2 semaines, voire un peu plus, on verra bien. En tout cas, n'hésitez pas à me dire ce que vous en avez pensé, me donner votre avis le plus sincère, avec courtoisie et respect, bien évidemment. N'hésitez pas à vous abonner et activer la cloche de notification pour être toujours au rendez-vous. Activez la cloche, je viens de le dire je crois, mais bon, activez la cloche pour être toujours là, votre meilleur petit pouce bleu, et rejoignez-moi sur les différents réseaux sociaux, tout se trouve en barre d'infos. Je vous fais plein de gros bisous, je vous dis à la prochaine, prenez soin de vous, bye guys.